Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Pip Hare. Pip is a professional ocean racing sailor with a wealth of experience over the past 16 years in the marine industry, clocking up over 120,000 miles across the world's oceans, including the Pacific, the Atlantic, and as far south as Patagonia. Hi, Pip.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. Suffering a little bit from the cold because I'm just back from the Caribbean, but I'll be okay.
Oh, where are you based at the moment?
I live in Poole, and the boat that I'm currently racing is based in Poole, but I'm spending a lot of time out of the country at the moment.
Oh, the Caribbean sounds absolutely fantastic. What were you doing over there?
I've just got a new boat that I'm racing, and we went over to the Caribbean for the winter to do the Caribbean 600, which is an offshore race over there, and some training. And then last month I brought it back across the Atlantic.
Oh, amazing. Oh, Pip, I can't wait to talk all about your background and your sailing and the different adventures that you've been on. But I would just like you to introduce yourself and tell everybody just a little bit more about you.
I am in my 40s. That's quite a difficult question. I guess I see myself as a person that's very passionate about the outdoors in general, but in particular sailing. Sailing is the one thing in the world that really drives me on and motivates me to do incredible things. I don't really know, Sarah. That's a really difficult question.
Well, let's go back. Let's find out a little bit more about, where you grew up. What were you like? What was your family like? Did you have brothers and sisters?
So I grew up. I was born in London, but then my family moved to East Anglia when I was quite young. And I grew up in the Fens, which is very flat and not that close to the sea. I come from a reasonably large family, 4 children. And when we were younger, we lived with our grandparents as well. So there were always plenty of people knocking around our house. I sailed from a young age because my grandfather sailed and my parents sailed with him, and then the family sailed. But actually, when I was a child, I didn't really enjoy sailing much. It was sort of family holidays, which were very fun when I was very little, jumping in and out of the water and that sort of thing. But when I got to being a teenager, I didn't really enjoy it that much. I guess I really developed a proper passion for sailing about the time that I was doing my A-levels, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. I applied to different universities to do sports science, but there was a bit of a mess up with my exam results and ended up taking a year out. And during that year I went sailing, and that was really where I developed a passion for it and discovered that it was the one thing in life that I really desperately wanted to do. It was the one thing that kept coming back. And so I ended up making a career out of sailing.
So what was that year out like? What did you end up doing?
Lots of different things. I went down to the south coast. So there's not a lot of opportunities to make a living out of sailing in East Anglia. So I went straight down to the south coast and did some work experience in a boatyard and with a sailing school. And the first thing I did was get my Yachtmaster ticket, which is the commercial ticket which allows you to work in the sailing industry on yachts. And then I did a bit of sailing on tall ships as well, which I really, really enjoyed. And that was my first experience of proper offshore sailing. So I sailed on the Lord Nelson, which is a tall ship that is converted so that it will allow able-bodied and disabled people to sail together. And I sailed with them down to the Canaries. And that was the first time I'd ever been out of sight of land. And I really enjoyed it. And that sort of gave me not just the focus to go sailing, but I think it probably gave me the wanderlust as well. I had a lot of different experiences during that year. I sailed on a lot of different types of boats. I met a lot of different people. And I think I decided the sailing community was one that I wanted to be part of. But then I also started to become aware of the field of single-handed ocean racing and started to read a lot about other people that were doing this type of racing. And that was really when the first seeds were sown in my mind that it might be something that I'd like to do.
So after your year out, did you end up going on to university, or was sailing the direction that you decided to forego university?
I ended up reapplying to university, and I got offered a place in Southampton to do physiology. But I realised at the time one of the main reasons I'd chosen Southampton was so I could go sailing. So I thought, well, I'll just go sailing instead. I guess when I was at school, nobody ever mentioned it. I think it was quite difficult for me. I was quite an all-rounder. I was very passionate about sports, but I also had quite an academic background, and I could have done any one of a number of things. And that was the biggest problem for me, was that I had a lot of options open to me with good exam results, but none of them really engaged with me. None of them I felt passionate about. And sailing was really the only thing that I felt passionate about. And so I ditched the university and went sailing instead. However, last year I did just finally finish my undergraduate degree with the Open University. So I've managed to do both, but it just took me quite a long time.
Congratulations. I mean, I think back to when I was like 18. I don't think it ever crossed my mind that I could do something different. I think, whether it was family, not I wouldn't say like family pressure or, what all my friends were doing. It was just the logical journey was just school, gap year, university, London. And
exactly.
I'm just really intrigued as in, when you actually made that decision and said, actually, I'm not going to go down the university route. I am going to go down the sailing route. What was the reaction of your friends and your family?
It was a really difficult thing to do, and especially it was difficult for my family as well, because both my sisters and my brother went to university. I think in my parents' minds, I would go to university and I would get a sort of inverted commas professional career, and so it was a really tough decision for me to make. I felt a lot of responsibility towards my parents to do what they hoped I would do, and I also understood that I guess I was disappointing their hopes and ambitions for me by choosing something alternative. But with me, it was purely about the fact that, and this is something that I recognise in myself even now. In order to do well at something, in order to be fully engaged with it, I need to be passionate about it. And I just didn't have that feeling about just going to university. I didn't really see the point. And so it was after my year out, or during my year out. I think before then I hadn't really even considered the fact that I could have a career in the sailing industry. And during my year out, I discovered that was possible, and how many alternatives there were within that industry. And breaking the news to my parents was very difficult. However, ultimately, they came to terms with it, and I think quite soon were quite proud of what I was achieving.
I just want to take you back. You remember you were saying on your gap year that you headed down to the Canaries, and it was the first time that you'd been out of sight of land, and you just really enjoyed it. I suppose, what was it like? Could you take us back to that moment where suddenly you are out on the ocean as such, and you're doing what you wanted to be doing?
I think that's it. Interestingly, that experience was very different from the kind of experiences that I have on the ocean now, because that was on a tour ship. There was a large crew. I think the crew might have been about 40 people. So there were no feelings of isolation or anything like that. And a tour ship is a very big vessel. So even then, and the weather that we had on the way down to the Canaries was very bad. But even then, you feel safe and secure because the vessel's so big. But it's just not being able to see any land, not being able to see anything other than sky and sea. I really love that environment, and I really love that sort of feeling of isolation, which now, if you look at the sort of sailing that I do now, which is out of preference, it's single-handed ocean sailing. That's taking that feeling to a huge extreme, because I'll be in the middle of the ocean entirely on my own, and I still love it. It's challenging, and it is at times, I wouldn't say it's frightening, but at times it does. You know something's going to happen. You know that you're up against the elements, and you need to be the best person you are to overcome the problems that you're going to see. But the ocean always changes, and it's an environment that really will keep you on your toes all the time. It's never the same, and I think that's something that my personality particularly enjoys.
I mean, when you talk about the isolation and being out there, I mean, almost the flip side that I'd be thinking about is almost the loneliness. And I suppose, what have you learnt from those experiences of that isolation, or being on your own while you do these sailing challenges?
I think I've definitely learnt that my personality can deal with being alone, and I've learnt that there's a very big difference between being lonely and being alone. And I never feel lonely when I'm racing or at sea, because the truth is that you are so busy, you've got so much to do. There is a never-ending list of things you could be doing to make your boat go faster, or to keep it safe, or to stop it from breaking down. And if you're truly engaged with the racing, then there's no time to feel lonely. I think it's when you stop engaging with what you're trying to do, that's when potentially feelings of loneliness could come in. But somebody who is living in the middle of a city could feel more lonely than I would feel being on my own in the middle of the ocean.
Let's talk about the single-handed ocean racing that you've done. When did you first get into this?
I first became aware of it when I was sort of 18, 19, and that was about the time that people like Ellen MacArthur were starting to do their first trips. And then I sort of latched onto it and thought, wow, that's something that I really, really want to do. But it took me a very long time to get there. I suffered probably from a lack of confidence in myself. I did a lot of sailing, and repeatedly to myself, I said this was a goal I wanted to achieve. But I think probably the older I got, I believed I could do it. I always believed I could do it, but I was actually frightened of vocalizing those ambitions to other people. It wasn't until I was 35 that I actually managed to pull together a plan to take part in one of these single-handed races. And my first ever challenge sailing single-handed was to sail a 39-foot yacht from Uruguay in South America to the UK directly. So that was 7,500 miles and took me 58 days. But I didn't manage to pull that together until I was 35.
What do you think changed? Why do you think it all started to come together at 35 for you?
I think there are a number of things. One is that I found a sponsor who I had been working with in the past. I've been doing corporate hospitality for them, skipping their boat in Cowes. And I'd got to know them over a number of years, and I had mentioned to select people from that company that I did have sailing ambitions, and they very much believed in me, and they encouraged me, and eventually they gave me the opportunity to enter my first race. So it was having somebody who I trusted enough to vocalize my ambitions, and who believed in me enough to support me. that was my major lucky break in terms of the sort of actually getting things on the road. But internally, I think I realised that if I didn't do something about it, if I didn't actually try, then I would get to old age and really regret that I'd never had a go. And I think it just took that many years for me to give myself permission to have a go, and even if it didn't work, just to have a go.
And it's very, very powerful when you do reach that stage where you give yourself permission and allow yourself to do it. But sometimes we do go on these journeys, whether it takes 10 years or 17 years. So you're 35 years old, you're over in Uruguay, you're going to be sailing the 7,500 miles back to the UK. And in terms of planning, how do you plan for an event like this?
There's a huge long list of things that you need to be confident about before you even cast off one line. So first of all, there's the actual sailing ability. So practicing endlessly on manoeuvres, going out in different sorts of weather, understanding that you are able to get sails that normally might be put up with a crew of 10 up and down on your own. And that's a lot about technique, devising different techniques and practicing them. And then there is the sort of mechanical side of things as well, because when you're out in the middle of the ocean on your own, if something breaks, and some of the boats that I sail are very high tech now, they've got a lot of electronics on board as well as sort of the mechanical things like winches. So you need to know how to take everything apart, how it works, how to fix it, how to spot problems before they happen. So there's that side of things. Physical fitness is important. I think it's something that in the past has been a bit overlooked. But now, particularly as ocean race yachts become more and more powerful, then physical fitness is a very important part of ocean racing, and that is strength and endurance. And then there's the navigation and weather and that side of things. So you need to be able to have a source of weather information when you are on the sea, and that could be via satellite communications or via radio communications. You need to be able to interpret the weather information that you receive and plot a safe and fast course with it.
I mean, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was your physical fitness, especially when you talked about the sails and, sails which would normally have a crew of 10 people and you're having to do it by yourself. And I totally get that there's technique in that, but actually you do need to have strength and to be able to do that. How do you get yourself to the top of your physical fitness before you undertake a crossing like this?
A lot of it is technique, and actually it's really interesting if you look at the really well-known, accomplished offshore sailors, female offshore sailors. They're tiny, they're not big girls, and so technique is hugely important. Endurance wise, I run a lot, and I find sort of marathon distance running is very complementary to the type of endurance that you need for offshore sailing. And then I'm not a great one for the gym. I don't do any gym work at all because I just find I'm an outdoors person. I need to be outside when I do everything, and quite often just being on the boat, just working on the boat, just preparing things, I'm building my physical strength all the time. Because, for example, one of the spinnakers on the current boat that I sail weighs about 20 kilos. So every time I have to move that sail from down below on deck, put it in the van, take it out of the van again, all of that time I'm actually working with the types of weights that are the right size and the right shape to develop the fitness that I need. The main thing that I've started doing in the last year, because I've started to get quite a lot of back and neck problems, which are probably as a result of the yachts that I race at the moment don't have any bunks at all. There is nothing in them. So when I sleep, I just sleep on the floor, on a hard floor. in my whatever I'm wearing at the time, if I wear the gear. And so I've started to do quite a lot of yoga to work on flexibility and also my core strength, which has definitely helped in the last year or so.
I was just thinking, you need to get yourself a nice little blow-up bed air mattress to use. I've just got this vision of you coming in, the waves are crashing outside, you're in your wet weather gear, there's just the floor, you just lie down, pass out and sleep. But how does the sleeping work while you're out there? I mean, you said it took you 58 days to cross from Uruguay to the UK. And, I don't know if that's like a standard amount of time, but are you doing 2 hours on, 2 hours off, similar to ocean rowers? Or are you, how does it work?
No, it's pretty different to the way the rowers do it, because their boat is obviously less fast than something that I would be sailing, and so they're able to have a more regular time off. So basically, it very much depends on conditions. I would aim to get around 4 to 6 hours sleep in every 24-hour period. And if the weather's very, very bad and the boat needs attention, then I would catnap, which is sleeping for maybe 10 or 15 minutes at a time. And you learn to be very, very self-aware. So I will push myself to a level of fatigue that is just below where I start to shut down a bit, and then I will have a 15-minute nap, and then I will go again. And I might nap for 15 minutes every hour or 2 hours, but that basically just keeps you going through a time period where you can't afford to have any more sleep. When conditions are more stable, then I would sleep for up to 2 hours at a time, but not normally more than 2 hours, because things can really change within a 2-hour time slot. And so the boat that I'm racing at the moment can make an average speed with the autopilot driving of 15 or 16 knots. And so you can imagine the distance that you travel and the things that might happen within that time frame when you sleep for longer than 2 hours. It's not really possible. And then sometimes there are occasions where I might know it's very, very stable, conditions very stable. Maybe there's not a lot of wind at all. So, for example, when you're in the doldrums or something like that, there's not a lot of wind at all. And during those times, you might choose to bank sleep. So you're still waking up regularly. You might wake up every hour, but you might actually find a good slot where you can bank some sleep, because you know that further down the line, there's not going to be an opportunity.
So what happens when you get to land? Are you absolutely exhausted after your crossings?
Yes, yeah. But it's incredible what the body is capable of, though, because while I'm racing, my body knows what's expected of it. So over the years that I've been doing this, it's been very well trained to understand what's required of it in terms of sleep and that sort of thing. And so I can keep going and keep going and keep going. But the minute I hit land, I sort of enter a bit of a phase where it's like my mind is sort of maybe 10 minutes behind my body, or the other way around. And it takes a couple of days of really heavy sleeping to get the two coordinated again.
Now, you have been racing. I think you started racing in 2009. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So since then, you've done a whole variety of different races. When you look back at those races, which race has really challenged you for whatever reason, or which race stands out in your memory?
There's a couple. The Mini Transat, which is a single-handed transatlantic, and it's the biggest one design single-handed race in the world. It's incredible, and I've done that twice. So I'm the only British sailor who has completed that race twice. And the first time I did it was the first exposure that I had to the incredible starting, the events around starting these really big offshore races in France. And so for the mini transat in 2011, we started from La Rochelle, and 250,000 people came down and watched the start. And it was incredible. There were only 2 British entries out of a field of 76, I think it was, me and a guy called Dan. And the basin where the boats were was just rammed with people for the whole of the week before, coming down and looking at the boats. When we started, there were hundreds of spectator boats out on the water. The mouth of the river was lined with people. There were people all down the coast. There were helicopters in the sky. It was, we were just absolute heroes. Everybody knew who we were. They were all shouting our names. It's such an incredible sport in France. The ocean racing sailors in France have the same sort of standing as footballers. And so to take part in an event like that was a memory that I will always remember, that start.
Do you have to qualify for these events, or how do you get entry to the New Transat?
Yeah, you do have to qualify, and the qualification procedures are quite stringent, but for all of the really big races, they're pretty much oversubscribed all the time as well. So to qualify, you have to race 1,000 miles in the boat that you are going to race in the mini transat. And that's normally broken up over 3 different races. And then you have to sail a 1,000 mile course single-handed as well, which is specified by the committee. Though I did mine in the Med, but there's an Atlantic course as well. And you have to navigate with a sextant during that 1,000 mile qualifier too. But it's the places are first come, first served. So there's normally a race to qualify as well.
And will you be going for the triple?
Do you know, I'd love to, but because I adore the mini class, it's fantastic. But I've actually now got a campaign going in a class 40, which is the next step up, really. It's a 40-foot mini, if you like. And so I'm focusing on that and hoping to do the Route du Rhum, which is in 2018. So that is single-handed from France to Guadeloupe. And that's another of the really big international shore races.
Oh, excuse my bad geography. Where's Guadeloupe?
It's one of the French Caribbean islands.
Oh, amazing. Oh, so from France over to the Caribbean. Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
So when you're racing with the other boats, and there's like 70, 76 other boats out there, do you see them out on the ocean? Are you is it that close a race, or does it spread out quite quickly?
It really depends. The thing about the sort of the one design racing is that the boats are very, very evenly matched. And so, for example, the last big ocean race that I did, the really long one, was the TJV, which was from France to very far south in Brazil. That was 5,300 miles. And when we finished, there was a boat 1.5 hours in front of us, and then another boat 45 minutes in front of us. And for the last week of the race, we were within eyesight of these 2 other boats. And that was after nearly 4 weeks of racing. So sometimes it's very intense. You can't take your foot off the gas ever. There's always somebody who's going to be very close to you in the results. Whether you can see them or not really depends on the route that you take across the ocean. So, for example, in the mini transat in 2013, I actually damaged my boat. I broke some of the supports for the mast, and had to go into the coast and repair them and restart. And when I restarted, I was last. Everyone else had just gone. But because of that, I took a very different route across the ocean from everybody else, and I didn't see a single person for the whole race. And when we finished, there were boats. There was a boat that finished like 20 minutes ahead of me, and a boat that finished an hour behind me. So we were very close on the water, but I just didn't see anybody.
Now, you've also participated in the round Britain and Ireland, the two-handed race.
Yes, yeah, that was in 2010 in my original boat, which was a boat that I actually lived on and then converted to racing when I had the first opportunity in 2009 with the OSTAR.
Did you put a bunk in that boat?
That boat did have bunks in it, actually, yeah. was it was quite cozy by comparison. And yes, so in 2010 I did the Round Britain and Ireland race, which is double-handed, and I did that with my co-skipper Phil Stubbs, and we won that overall. So we won our class, and we won the whole event overall as well, which was fantastic.
Oh no, that's absolutely amazing. I mean, I suppose a lot of these races, there must be this strategy behind it. And is it a case of, do you have a plan and a strategy before you go into the race? Or is it very much just so dependent on what happens when you're out there, so you've got to be really, really flexible with it? Or do you start out with like a rough strategy, if that makes sense?
It's a bit of both, really. It massively depends on the weather, naturally. And when you're in the middle of the ocean, the weather is pretty much the only thing that you need to worry about, unless, for example, your boat gets damaged. And generally, it depends how you get your weather forecast. So in the mini class, which is the little 21-foot boats, we were not allowed any computers on board at all. So we received our weather forecasts verbally over a shortwave radio, which was quite interesting because they did recordings in French and in English. So the French ones, it's a French event, and most of the competitors are French, and the French weather forecast would be like an hour long, and the English one was 10 minutes. So you sort of had to glean what you could from this very crackly voice over the radio, giving you a verbal weather forecast for the whole ocean. But on the bigger boats, we're allowed satellite communications and computers, and so we can download some really, really detailed weather forecasts. So we can look at satellite images, we can get satellite measurements of actual wind strengths, and then we get these computer-based files which will show you weather forecast patterns for up to 2 weeks ahead. But in reality, you can only really have confidence in a weather forecast for up to 5 days ahead. And so you will look at a 2-week forecast, you will base a loose strategy on a 2-week forecast, but then you have a very tight strategy based on 3 days, and then a sort of medium one for up to 5. But you have to be prepared to change continuously.
You could try and explain it to maybe like non-ocean racers. What is it that you love about racing across oceans?
For me, that's quite easy. It's something that I will always be learning with. You're always going to encounter situations that you've never come across before when you're out on the ocean, because the ocean, the wind, they're live environments. They're constantly changing. And the wonderful thing about sailing is that you will never, ever, 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 ever know it all. You can put as much effort into racing the boat as you want to. You can ramp it up, you can bring it down depending on how your energy levels are. It is all encompassing. There's so many different ways in which you can use your own skills to stay ahead or to get ahead. So that includes, just maintaining the boat, fixing things, ability to understand weather and use computers, sail trimming, steering. There's so many different facets to it. And just in terms of what it gives me, there's no other feeling in the world for me like having the spinnaker up and screaming down the front of a wave at 20 knots, helming, covered in water. The whole boat is vibrating and it's going up your arms, and you're on a knife edge all the time because the competitive part of you wants to stay ahead, wants to drive the boat. And then there's another part that thinks, well, how much is too much? At what point is it too much for me to be able to get the sail down? At what point am I going to be too tired to steer this well in these conditions? And so there's this amazing mixture of total adrenaline, which is a combination of just sheer joy and fun, and then just this nervous sort of ball in your stomach of wanting to make the right decision before things go wrong, but really needing to keep the speed on for as long as you can because you don't know what your other competitors are doing. And I think that's the feeling I don't get from anything else in life, and it's what I love. It's why I keep going out there.
Oh, I love it. I love it when people find their passion and just absolutely love what they're doing. I remember I was chatting with Lowri Morgan. Must have been last year now, and she was telling us about the Three Peaks Yacht Race, which is how I first came to hear about you. And I heard about this race and I was like, oh my goodness, this sounds absolutely incredible. So I'd love for you to explain, for people who aren't familiar with what the concept is for the Three Peaks Yacht Race and how you came to be part of the incredible all-female team.
So the Three Peaks Yacht Race it's been running for 40 years. This year's its 40th anniversary. And it is, I think it's probably one of the most epic endurance races the world has to offer. So it's a combination of sailing, running, rowing and cycling. It's traditionally done by teams of 5. You set sail from Barmouth in Wales, and the idea is to sail to the closest point of each of the 3 highest peaks in England, Wales and Scotland, and then to summit those peaks and then sail to the next one. But the course itself is enormously challenging for sailing because it's in some quite difficult waters in terms of navigational hazards. So there's lots of tidal currents and tidal heights. You have to go through the Menai Straits, which it's quite an impressive piece of water. And it's one of the few races. In fact, there's only 2 yacht races that allow rowing. Normally in yacht racing, you're not allowed to propel the boat in any other way other than just the wind. But there's 2 races in the UK that allow rowing. One is the Three Peaks race and the other one is the double-handed round Britain and Ireland, which I've also done. So in the Three Peaks race, if there's no wind, you're allowed to row the boat as well. So that's interesting, setting up boats with oars. So I did the race first in 2013 and had chatted with it at length with Elin Haf Davies, who I think has been on the podcast as well.
She has, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Elin and I met in 2012 because she'd done her rowing and she decided that sailing was the next thing that she wanted to get involved in. And a mutual friend put her in touch with me and I took her sailing in a Mini. And we've been friends ever since. And Elin decided that she wanted to do the Three Peaks race. And she got together with Lowri, and then she called me and said, did I want to do it? And I'd not met Lowri then, but I massively respect the things that Elin has done. She's just a get up and go, I'm going to do this kind of person. And so I just said yes straight away. And then we ended up getting Nikki, who's also a mini transat sailor, on the team, and Joe, who rode the ocean with Elin. And it was fantastic, just utterly brilliant experience, having 5 women on the boat who were all very focused on winning but incredibly supportive of each other. I couldn't have put together a better team. It was fantastic.
Talk to us about the race and what happened, because I believe there are a few people who were making maybe not the most positive comments about the all-female team.
I think it's interesting in these events, and I sort of have mixed feelings about all female teams. I think sometimes people tend to focus on the fact that you're women and forget that overall and above everything, you're competitors in the same event that everybody else is doing. And I think perhaps there at the beginning of the race, that was where some people's opinion of our team lay. They were very focused on, it's an all-female team, and didn't really look at us as individuals or as athletes. And I think probably didn't really consider that we were going to be competitive. And we put in some pretty solid results during the race and sort of hung on to the top 2 or 3 boats, and then managed to break away in the last leg on the sailing and gained line honours, which was fantastic. And I think that surprised a lot of people. But actually, if you'd have stripped everything away and stopped just looking at the fact that we were all women and actually said, okay, well, on board this boat, we have Joe, who has rowed across oceans and done Ironmans. We have Lowri, who is, a world class ultra runner. We have Nikki, who's done the mini transat and is a well established ocean racing sailor. Obviously, Elin. Each of us as individuals deserved a lot more than just being viewed as a women's team. But I think that's part of the problem with all female sports. Sometimes the media are just looking for an angle, and if the angle is that you're different because you're a woman, then that's the one they'll take.
When you look at you all individually, what you have accomplished and achieved, it is just awe-inspiring. I mean, for me, the story that stands out with Lowri is just the running up and down Snowdon 3 times. And then but after the second time, sitting in a car, getting lovely and warm and cosy, having a nice cup of tea and a sandwich, and then getting out of the car again to go run up Snowdon and back down again. And it does just blow my mind. In terms of that actual race, what were some of the standout moments for you?
I think what was really interesting was that we, as a team, we'd only met, all of us, the day before the race. And so the fact that we managed to bond and gel so well and so quickly was an absolute standout. We were close from the beginning and to the end. We just stayed as this very well-knit team, which I thought was incredible because, we didn't have any reason to be. I think, so Jo injured herself on Snowdon, and as the sailors, we didn't see what was happening on the mountains. But I know that on Scafell, Jo was in a lot of pain. And that was 11 hours of exercise for them. It was 11 hours on bikes and then running and then bikes again for that whole turnaround. And I think, what Jo must have been through, well, Jo and Lowri together, what they did together to achieve that was incredible. And I only really became fully aware of it when we watched the documentary afterwards, and I could see how much pain she was in. But of course they just went away and came back again. Sailing wise, for us, going up to the final leg up to Fort William, I think we did like close to 100 tacks, which is when the boat changes direction, you have to put the sails onto the other side, and we were trying to stay out of the tide, so we were going up the side of a lock, and we were tired. We'd been sailing all night, we hadn't had any sleep, and so Elin, Nikki and I just worked the boat. We were tacking like every 5 minutes or so, just for hours endlessly, and nobody ever complained, and everyone was so in it. And I just remember Lowri and Jo popping their heads up at that stage, because we were very insistent that they wouldn't do any rowing, they wouldn't do any sailing. We needed them just to recover. They were the runners, we were the sailors. When they were on the water with us, we looked after them. And when we were sort of really working the boat hard, they put their heads up, and I just remember Lowri saying, "I'll do anything for you. Just ask me, I'll do anything for you." It was such a nice feeling, to all of that mutual support. It sounds all very warm and glowy, but it really was. It was amazing.
What were the transitions like? Because I've got this mental image in my head of, the boat coming in, whether it's coming into the pier, the girls are on the deck with their bikes on their shoulders, ready to jump off onto the pier, get on their bike, hop on and start cycling like mad, and then start the running. Was that how the transitions were?
Sort of. So we had a shore crew, and the shore crew, we had a male shore crew, Chris, but he's an honorary girl. And then we had Mike, who joined us at the end as well. And basically, so they were all different. So in Carnarvon, there's transition in Carnarvon is onto a pier end in a very, very strong tide, and it's quite hard to manoeuvre the boat alongside there, and it was dark. So we had our shore crew there, Ellen's family were there as well, and literally the girls sort of dress up in their running gear, and then I manoeuvred the boat as close to the pier as I could get, and they literally sort of had to leap into the arms of the people who were waiting. And when we picked them up, we had the sails on deck ready to go. They just literally, we grabbed them, they jumped on board, and then we had the sails straight up and we were off. In Whitehaven, the shore crew had the bikes, so we didn't have to take the bikes on the boat. The funny thing was when they came back from their ride in Whitehaven, so they were absolutely knackered, and they were wearing their running shoes, and we had a really short time frame to get the boat out of the lock. Both lock gates were open, and we literally had like another 2 or 3 minutes. We'd asked the marina staff if they could just keep them open for us. We had 2 or 3 minutes to get the girls on board and leave. And so they were running in their cleats down the pontoon, which was a little bit slippery. And Lowri was first, and she got to the corner and literally her feet just went out from underneath her and she fell over on this corner. And then Joe was running down behind her, and literally same patch, Joe's feet just went out from underneath her, and they're both just in a heap on the floor. And there was this man standing on the front of his boat with his arms crossed looking at them, and he just said to them, "And that, ladies, is why we don't run on pontoons."
Oh God, I can imagine, like, get on the boat, come on, get on the boat, 3 minutes to go.
It was, and the transitions are part of the crazy funness of this race, really. So but did you know I'm doing the race double-handed this year?
No. So oh my God, how's that going to work?
Well, we're the first people that have ever been allowed to do it. So my co-skipper is a guy called Charles Hill, who was a runner in the race when I did it in 2013. And we put in a special application to the committee to ask if we could do it 2 up, and they agreed. So basically we've got a lot of shore support, but who are going to look after the boat when we jump off it. But basically we are going to sail, row, run, cycle, everything.
Oh my goodness, I'm exhausted just thinking about it. When's that taking place?
Start date is the 18th of June. So I'd had it in the back of my head that it was something that I thought, I mean, it's going to be really, really, really hard. It's definitely going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. And I had it in the back of my head that it was something I wanted to do before we did the race with Ellen's team in June last year. And then after the race last year, I just thought, yes, this is definitely possible. I just need to get my running fitness back up to a stage where I'd be comfortable. And I mentioned it to Charles, and he's a very accomplished trail runner, and he said he would be keen to do it with me. And so I started a running program in July last year, and then when I was comfortable with my running, we put an application into the committee at the beginning of this year, and they accepted it. And so it's I'm sort of in my last month of training. I've just had a month sailing across the Atlantic, which hasn't been that helpful, but I need to get out and do some hills in the next month. So
that'll be awesome. And just in terms of just so I think people can get like an idea of the time frame, like how long does it take to do this race roughly?
About 4 days.
Wow, so there's going to be a lot of sleep deprivation in there.
Yes, I think we're not going to be able to have a proper sleep really until we've done the Scafell. So we will be 48 hours into the race and 2 peaks down before we can sleep for longer than 2 hours, I think.
Oh my goodness, that's going to be absolutely fantastic. Now, Pip, if people want to find out more information about you and your ocean racing and the different challenges that you've done, where's the best place for them to go to?
So I've got a website and a Facebook page, and the website is Pip Hare Racing, and the webpage is pipoceanracing.com.
Fantastic. And Pip, any final words of advice, anything that you've learned from doing these incredible adventures that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think probably it is about self-belief and about not being afraid to start something, because I've always had really big ambitions. I'm a really big dreamer, and I think I didn't start off on my journey for a long time because I was scared of what might happen if I didn't reach my big goal. But actually, when you give yourself the permission to start, doing things that are other people might consider a bit different. It doesn't matter where you end up. It really doesn't, because the repayment that you get inwardly and the confidence that you build and the places that you will end up are just so amazing. I think it's just all about giving yourself the permission to start.
Absolutely. Be a big dreamer, have big ambitions. Pip, thank you so much. And like it says on your website, the greatest adventure is what lies ahead.
Thank you.
Hey tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Pip. And what's really fascinating is you can actually listen to different perspectives from this challenge. So go and take a listen to Lowri Morgan. We've had her on the podcast. Absolutely amazing ultra runner. She also talks about the latest challenge, which is becoming a new mother and how that's impacted on her training. We've also interviewed Elin Haf Davies, an incredible ocean rower as well. Very, very accomplished in what she's done, rowing the Indian Ocean, sailing across the Pacific Ocean. Again, a really fascinating podcast. What I really love doing is Pip talked about the documentary there. If you go to YouTube, you can watch this documentary. It's about 45 minutes. Just type in Three Peaks Yacht Race 2016, and you can get to see all of the women involved, the different aspects of the challenge, from the sailing to the running to the cycling, what happened, how the competition played out. And it makes absolutely fascinating watching, especially when you put it together with listening to the podcast episode. I think you sort of end up getting this 360 degree perspective, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Now, a massive thank you to everybody who's been supporting the Tough Girl podcast. And one of the questions that I get asked very often is, Sarah, how do you do what you do? And it is through the support of over 100 patrons who are donating to me every single month, whether that's $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, $20 a month. Your and their financial contribution makes a massive difference to help me fund the running costs so that I can put out new episodes and new content every single week. So if you want to become a patron and you want to get involved, go and check out Patreon, which is www.patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, and you can find out more information. It is so simple and easy to join, so simple and easy to get involved. Honestly, it takes less than a minute to sign up and subscribe. And once you've done it, you'll know that every single month that you are contributing to help fund the running costs of the Tough Girl Podcast, and you're helping with the mission to motivate and inspire women and girls around the world. This year, my plan is to reach out to over 500,000 women through the podcast. We're coming up to well over 300,000 downloads, possibly even more now. So thank you to everybody who's helping me to reach this goal by the end of the year. And that goal is all about increasing the amount of female role models in the media, because if women can see it, if they can hear it, then they can believe that they can also do it, because there's nothing stopping them when they see other women doing it. So I hope you apply all of the top tips and advice that Pip shared with you, especially around self-belief and going after your own dreams. It took her until she was 35, and it is never too late to start. It's always too late to wait, but it's never too late to start. So please do go and check that out. We've got some awesome episodes coming up in the following weeks. Next week, we're going to be speaking to Catherine Edsel, who's also a member of the Tough Girl tribe, and she is an expedition leader and has been for 20 odd years. She talks a lot about the impact of becoming a mother and how that's impacted on her expeditions and how it hasn't stopped her. She recently took her family out to Everest Base Camp, and she also came up with the idea of the matriarch adventure, but she'll share more of that on next week's podcast, which comes out on a Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. After that, on the 29th of August, we've got Laura Maisie coming on, and Laura ran home from Rome. Absolutely amazing story about how she first got into running and what inspired her to keep on going, and how you too can also go after your own goals and ambitions. At the beginning of September, we're speaking to Sam Taylor, who is also known as a bit of a sofa dodger. But this is Sam's journey of trying out 100 different sports and activities. And she tells you the high points, the low points, and the challenges that she faced. And then on the 12th of September, we're speaking with Caroline Elliott. Caroline will be sharing more of her challenges when it comes to working in the mountains. Caroline is a British woman who's working with the French French mountain rescue team, the search and rescue team, with her dog Fjord. So a really different episode and something very, very different. We learn more about her experiences of how she got into working in the mountains and why she's so passionate about it. So I talked about the patrons before, and I just want to highlight a few of my long-standing patrons who've been supporting the podcast. A big shout out to Rochelle Olsen, who is she's an Aussie, 30-something, she's plus size, and she's cycled nearly 5,000 kilometers from Canada to Mexico. She's hiked to Everest Base Camp. She's run a 25-kilometer mountain race in the Spanish Pyrenees. She's trekked the Inca Trail, scuba dived in oceans and freshwater caves around the world, raced over 20 triathlons, and solo hiked the Queen Charlotte Track in New Zealand, and has done a whole host of other adventures in between. You can listen to Rochelle on the Tough Girl podcast, but please also do go and check out her website as well, RochelleOlsen.com, and you can read more about her different adventures and challenges. I also want to do another big shout out to my sister Caroline Wellingham, who's been a long time patron of the Tough Girl podcast, and you can learn more about her and what she gets up to at Raise the Bar Life Coaching. Caroline is one of the most inspirational women out there, and if you're feeling in a little bit of a rut and you need to make a change to your life, then please do go check out Caroline. She works with women all over the world and helps them to achieve their dreams and ambitions. So thank you again to everybody who's been supporting the podcast. And it's not just about the financial support. The other things that you can be doing is telling your friends about it, sharing on social media, sending tweets out, liking the Facebook page. It does make a big difference. So at this moment in time, I'm currently out on the Appalachian Trail through hiking 2,190 miles. I started from Springer Mountain in Georgia on the 3rd of June, and my plan is to finish the hike on the 10th of September, which is my birthday, at Mount Katahdin. If you want to come and see how my journey has been progressing, then please do go check out my YouTube channel. Just search Tough Girl Challenges and you'll be able to see all of my vlogs as well. But any information you want to find out about, just go to toughgirlchallenges.com. And I have given you a ton of information in this podcast, but honestly, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving up your time to listen to these podcasts. I really do appreciate it. I know there's a lot of content out there, and I appreciate you picking the Tough Girl podcast. It makes such a big difference. Guys, have an awesome week. Whatever you are doing, wherever you are in the world, just go out, have fun, enjoy your life. Just live life to the max. You get one life, so make sure that you are living it. You are following your passions and you are having fun. Take care. I'll speak to you next week for another awesome episode of the Tough Girl podcast. Lots of love. Bye.